No, it is totally unplanned. You know, that's how that's you make people lull into their strange belief that this was totally unplanned, and you leave your tinfoil hats back at home. Yeah. So, hey everyone, my name is István Szmozsánszky. Actually, Maxim is getting pretty good at pronouncing my last name, so or my first name. So we're gonna have to do a few more events to teach him my proper pronunciation for the last name and for him to be able to and like willing to go on stage to do that. So for the time being, Flaki is fine. Let me introduce you my friends and assistants, giving me a bit of support for the conference talk. Support is much needed because obviously last minute things are turning out like uh, Microsoft, yay, does not support the video system of the conference. Well, if I want to bash the conference, it's a conference that doesn't support my laptop. But this is actually a good part to lead in my presentation about the web or bust, because they were like, okay, can you like put the presentation on a can you put the presentation on like a thumb drive and like just use it on the other one, on the other like backup computer? I was like, yeah, well, whatever. It should be accessible from the web, so just get me a browser. I was like, hey, we only have Chrome. Is Chrome okay? I was like, yeah, Chrome should be fine. And that's funny because most people know me of my Mozilla contribution and my Foxes. Uh, so yeah, I'm a JavaScript developer. I do a lot of web stuff, but I've been doing a lot of mobile stuff. I mean, who here have ever like been around for the G2 EME era, G2 Java 2 Mobile Edition? So I've been writing apps for Nokia for what was it? 3310? Yeah, 3310, the first G2ME Nokia phone. And I've been fascinated by the mobile world for a long time. Uh, then Firefox OS came around like a few years ago, and I started to contribute a lot to Mozilla because back at that time I was already doing a lot of web, PHP, and stuff like that. Firefox OS was like this is the savior, the something that God gave us that was also mobile but also web technologies like native on the platform. I was like, this thing, yeah, it just come in the right time. So I started working with Mozilla, started getting into more and more open source projects. And like a few years ago, 2 years ago maybe, I started getting into JavaScript and hardware stuff. If you were at the mobile era community meeting, you might have seen some craziness on JavaScript and hardware stuff. I'm going to be talking about this in a bit more later. But today, I'm doing like I actually have to pay for myself because being an open source contributor, you can easily die under a bridge. So I actually am a front-end trainer back in Hungary, and I'm doing workshops and stuff like that to feed the kids. Uh, and I'm preaching to the core. You all know this. Mobile is eating the world, yeah. So mobile is eating the world. Benedict Evans and a lot of people have like loads of stories about how mobile devices are overcoming like mobile sales overcoming desktop sales. Now mobile and tablet this was like a week ago. Mobile and tablet sales actually paused all desktop and notebook sales like all together. So okay, we all know about this, but and we are at the mobile conference. What does this had to do with anything? And oh yeah, tweet not showing up. Yay for cross domain. Okay, that might be interesting though for the future. Uh, okay, so yeah, yeah, the mobile is eating, but our problem is the web currently is currently in kind of a crisis, and that crisis. Let me just get you. Oh, come on. Oh, there you go. Just so showing Alex Russell in a Chrome browser. This is beautiful. Alex Russell has been tweeting about this. He is the creator of progressive web apps. You already had like a talk on this in this room yesterday. And he has been teaching about a lot of things, especially how the mobile world is in a huge distress currently, and mobile web especially. And if you have been around for a conference, we have seen a lot of people talking about a lot of different things. We have seen a lot of technologies at the intersection of both mobile native technologies and the mobile web or web-born technologies moving to mobile. React Native is one of those things. You know, if you have been around for Christina's presentation, she did a great job providing us with a lot of details on why you should be using React Native in your applications and why you shouldn't be. And you know, there is a lot of interaction between the two technologies. But what we are looking into, why would one care about the mobile app? You know, if they are, you know, I'm a native iOS developer. What do I care about the mobile app? Well, I'm a native Android developer. What do I care about mobile web stuff? And there is a good argument against that. Is you know, what you do as a mobile developer is you provide a great user experience to your people, to your users. That's what we're trying to achieve when you traditionally design a native application. You have better access to the hardware, more flexibility to the hardware, more performance. You're running languages closer to the hardware. And you have offline capabilities. Again, you have something already present on the user's computer. You have all those things already at your disposal. What are those things that you actually don't have as a mobile developer? And again, a lot of these issues come up time and time again. What you don't have, and just, you know, it wasn't 15 minutes ago, Jan Jumboom was giving a talk on, you know, hey, let's use IoT devices. And you're like, okay, I want to use this IoT device. I have this drone. I ordered it from the internet. I waited like 3 months until it got here with the free shipping. But finally, I can use it. Oh, no, you cannot use it, actually. You have to download a 60 megabyte application to use it. How are those problems being solved by platforms is very interesting. Because, let me see, there you go. Because a lot of those platforms that you don't currently have on native, like Android and iOS, has some kind of access to a vast a plethora of APIs. Those APIs cannot be overcome on the web currently or that you have been traditionally using. What APIs you have been able to access have been providing you possibilities to tap into hardware or tap into operating system primitives that are not available for the web. Jan has been using the Bluetooth networks, Bluetooth chip on the device, on your mobile phone. Each and every mobile device currently has a Bluetooth chip built into it. The problem is you get access to it via your native application, but you don't get access via your web application. Robert Nyman was tweeting about this table. This table shows up in another. All these folks are Googlers. I should get up latest slides with like Mozillians tweeting. I'm gonna get a whipping when I get home. Robert Nyman is an ex-Mozillian actually, and he's now at Google. He was tweeting about this table. If you look at it, it's what kind of things are available for mobile applications, native developers, and what kind of things are available for desktop applications. The very interesting things are not happening. You know, we all know that the mobile web is trying to come up with new ways. You know, increase performance to take back the native crown. What we also can see now is that actually the native platforms are trying to learn from the web itself, and for that, in a moment, we'll see if I have the picture. No, I don't have the picture. Shit. I already Christina's talk. Oh, Jesus, and I don't have. Should do. Christina's talk already treated XKCD. XKCD has perfect comics for every slideshow. This is, I'm gonna read it. Installing things has gotten so fast and painless. Why not just skip it entirely and make a phone that has every app installed already and just downloads and runs them on the fly. And on the subtext you see, I felt pretty clever until I realized I invented web pages. That's what basically a web page is. And this comic, that's like 2 or 3 years old. And then you'll go to the last Google I/O, and what you see announced, oh, now you can do instant apps. What is an instant app? Well, basically an Android native application that you can link to. That when you click on the link, tap on the link, the application will automatically stream to your device. I'm going to talk in a bit about progressive web apps, and the biggest and most touted feature of the web and progressive web apps, or the feature that Jan was using in their presentation, is that I don't have to do anything. I don't have to download anything. It just works. I just click this link and it just works. That's the huge power of the web currently, and that's the main power that it was built onto. All these fooling around with trying to share something with somebody, what do? You just copy the link and just send them the link. That worked for years and years in the web, and you still have an issue with sharing something on the native platform. How many times you try to share something from Instagram, just send it to a friend or send a map or something like that. Any times, basically, you have been doing that, you actually got a deep link, which is a deep link is, again, the native platforms learning from mobile platforms, native platforms learning from the mobile web, new tricks. And I was like, hey, I'm just going to cook up a link for you, and you can use this, and I'm going to intercept this this web link, and I'm going to throw you into the activity or whatever page of the application you have been using. So, okay, what we see is the native is trying to get closer to the web. What does the web do to get closer to native? I had the picture here. It's good to know. So enter progressive web apps. I'm not going to talk about progressive web apps. You just type it into any browser, any search box in your mobile device. You're going to find what progressive web apps, what technologies they stand for. You're going to see a plethora of videos. You're going to see people talking about it all the time. You even had a session on it that was nicely summarizing all the features that progressive web apps had. So progressive web apps can help you fix some of the web's problems. Some of the web's problems are actually not fixed by the progressive web app ideal, but actually you, the developer itself. What will happen is you'll have to yourself design user experiences that are compelling to people. And you can already do that on the web. You can already do that. You have React came from the web. React came as an answer to web applications becoming much more app-like, single-page applications, and people realizing that the traditional model of the web's performance wasn't enough to create compelling 60 frames per second user experiences inside a web browser. So people came up with this React idea, and it was like, okay, let's just do diffing. Let's just increase the performance. Let's just reduce the load or the work that the browser has to do on the side So we can actually improve on these technologies, improve on these performances. So React came, React won, and React created great user experiences for features for browsers. What React didn't bring with him, increased access to the device itself. What you cannot do currently in the web is you cannot reliably make sure your application works offline. You could do that if you had like a lot of, invested a lot of resources, trained a lot of people, and went over a lot of gray hairs. You could use the App Cache API, and you have been using it if you ever used Google like Gmail on the desktop ever, not just on your mobile phones. The Gmail website or inbox these days, both are using App Cache to make sure you can actually offline your applications. But it had the same problems like the web platform had before, not enough flexibility. So what we try to do is increase the flexibility on the web apps to implementing a few new APIs. Again, I'm not going to go into this, but you have been hearing about this on the previous talks. These new APIs let you create user experiences, let you increase the browser, let you increase the user experience, improve the user experience by adding previously missing parts to the system. Let me just, oops. So what are we talking about? What APIs are we talking about? There are a whole boatload of new features that are coming to the web platform. When you think back to the native platforms, like seven or 8 years ago, even on iOS, even on iOS devices, they were coming up with, there is going to be no native API. The only thing we are going to be using is the web itself. It turns out 7 years ago, the web wasn't ready for this. Turns out, 3 years ago, when Firefox OS came out, we are going to do one thing. We are going to do, run a browser in a Android kernel, and the only thing we are going to show to the user is going to be a web interface, because the web platform is mature enough. 2 years later, 2.5, 3 years later, Firefox OS gets shut down because apparently the web platform and by the web platform, you have to understand the whole of the web, not just Mozilla, not just Chrome, not just iOS, not just the Safari, but all the actors working together on the web. It turns out it wasn't ready. It wasn't enough. So Alex Russell, I've been mentioning him, was coming up to this point, and what he was realizing that the web platform is actually in serious danger. It was not in a danger of becoming extinct per se. It was in a danger of becoming irrelevant. And if I can, there you go. The web had loads of features. You can see that, you can see that from other platforms trying to implement those features. But it was in a huge crisis because it was becoming irrelevant. And why is the web becoming irrelevant? Again, I'm not going to talk in details about this, but Peter Gaston can do this much better than me. Peter Gaston is a developer from London. He's not a Googler, finally. And he has been giving talks about, talks titled Surveying the Landscape. And in the Surveying the Landscape, he tells about a lot of issues, pro and contra, why the web's viability is in danger. what you see these days is actually a lot of people moving into native platforms, and a lot of people moving into uh, native, closed-up, inaccessible silos, closed-down silos that come up with a host of their own problems. And people do that because people don't care about, being open. People don't care about being people don't care about free access to data. What people care about is building products. And to build products, okay. And to build products, you actually need a system that works for you. And if you look into that, how the web works compared to how like iOS and Android works, is the web implements the kind of stuff that developers already do on the internet. So it's like retrofitting the platform. Everything that is on the web currently emerges from the things people do on the web, on the internet. Compare that to iOS or Android. People build apps. People do new things on iOS and Android. Because new APIs, new APIs become available to them. They have a path, paved for them. Every now and then, new versions of Android came out, and new levels or new types of APIs being introduced. And people, so it's completely differently. It's on the other way around. It works. People get the new APIs before they actually start building with products with them. The problem with this approach, if you look on the web, it's very hard to actually follow the market if changes are coming very fast. If you're on the web, you need to react fast. You are building products, then you will have to create products that appeal to people, and it's much harder when all you have to do, all you can use are tools from the last century. Imagine how could, if you, actually I have a few examples on Uber. Imagine if you had to compete with Uber with the only thing you had was a car from the last century, which is basically what taxis try to do. But, this is basically the same thing. You start out with from like 100 meters behind, and you have to catch up with that. That's why it's so hard for a web platform to build to catch up. But on the other hand, we have already discussed this. The web platform has a killer distribution model that Alex mentions, and this is actually a Mozilla, and Dave Herman is heading up the research team at Mozilla. He says, the main reason I care about the web is because it's the world's biggest software platform that isn't owned by anyone. Google owns Android platform. The iOS platform is owned by Apple. The web platform is influenced by a lot of parties, but not owned by anyone. And that comes with a lot of trade-offs. And those trade-offs, how many of you have not this one, this one. How many of you have heard of the issue with Uber ramping up their prices on the mobile app when your phone was dying? So, oh yeah, there you go. So what happened is actually Uber, they found somebody reverse engineered, I don't know if it was in the API or if it was in the application code itself, or somebody did a research on that. Turns out, at some point, Uber was using your battery status to show you the prices. And Uber has like surge prices, which is like, you have to pay more for some of the trips you take. And Uber was using the data it acquired from your mobile phone, from your battery data, to drive those prices up, because from data and from research they realized that you were more willing to pay a search price if you're like half drunk, 2 a.m. in the morning, and the only thing you want to is just to get home. And Uh, so here's the thing. This happens on mobile because on mobile you have access to it. The problem is it can theoretically also happen on the web because on the web you actually had access to the battery API. You had access to the battery API, and on the web you could do this if you wanted to. If you ever had a web app for Uber, which as turns out you can actually have, but that's another issue. You could have this as a problem. So here comes here comes the trade-off of the two systems. On mobile, on native, access to the battery is a given. You don't even have to like query anything for it. You don't even have to send send a prompt to the user to access the battery levels. On the web, on the other hand, you have to care about these problems because on the mobile you expect those APIs to work, but on the web, if you're a normal user, you might have not even heard about your web browser being able to query your battery level. I mean, it makes sense at some point, providing more flexibility. We have a lot of web apps that use like more and more power, more and more features packed into them, and sometimes we want to make sure when the user is on like using their computer from battery, we don't want to deplete their battery by showing like shiny animations in a web app either. So it makes perfect sense if you think into it. There is a reasoning behind it from the developer point of view. The problem is the web doesn't cater or doesn't just cater for the developer. The web browser is your agent, so the web browser, the first thing the web browser has to care about is you, the person who's using it. So what happens on mobile? People, there's a huge cry out. How huge outcry. Nothing happens in the API level. Nothing happens in the Uber says no, we are not doing this anything like that. Pinky promise. What happens on the web? People actually go out of their way and tell, okay, this is not good. We cannot let this. And so they start thinking about how to protect the user from this kind of abuses of the battery API. The battery API actually had one more bug in the web that was fixed later. Imagine that you could actually query the battery level and you got back a floating point number. That is a very precise representation of the battery level. Now the problem is you can use that very precise representation of the battery level to fingerprint your users. You actually can be able to use this piece of information, cross-reference it, maybe other informations. There's a great site called, let me see if I can find my, there you go. There's a great site called browserleaks.com. Browserleaks.com actually tells you what kind of bits of information your browser leaks of you. So all these information could be used to personally identify you. And this is in your browser. And this is in a browser that cares about the user. This is in a browser that cares about the user's identity and tries for you not to be tracked. My best of this, the canvas tracking. So imagine whoever here used Windows devices. Hopefully you're not presenting at the conference. If you use Windows devices, there is a fine-tuning wizard for text output. Because Windows, unlike MacBooks, for example, has to care about the layout of the pixels on the display you connected. And this layout could be anything. So Windows has this handy thing that you can use to like fine-tune the representation of text on your device. It's a clear type, like fine-tuning software or in the settings of Windows. And they have to do this because with Windows devices, a plethora of different displays come up. So here's the thing. Turns out, when you use this API, it also affects the way browsers render text. Because obviously, that's the biggest thing browsers do. You render text on the user screen, right? You want to read text. That's like 99% of what a browser is about. Now here comes the Canvas API, which was actually invented by Apple to make sure that Flash is purged from Earth and to create something that wasn't using as much battery power as Flash, that could be controlled, that could be could be fast, could be used to display 2D text and images in a controlled way, controlled by the browser, instead of having to include a third-party plugin. So Safari included the first version of the Canvas API to create a 2D graphics object in the browser. Now basically, now that Flash is practically dead on the web, now everybody's using the Canvas API. So the Canvas API can load pictures, load other kind of graphics. You can draw on it. You can even pull in images from like the webcam feed. But what it can also do, you can write text on the Canvas API. This has actually been abused. People were actually rendering everything. If you seen the Flipboard app, Flipboard actually created a web app that was completely rendering everything by themselves onto a canvas, which was basically and practically a native application, except it was running in a web browser because it was doing all rendering on the canvas. So it turns out all your precisely handcrafted settings for putting text on the screen can personally identify you. A website can, just show a canvas, just hide it from your site, hide it from your view, draw text on the canvas, and read back the pixels that are written on the canvas. So text moving will modify the way pixels are put on the screen, and the actual red values of these pixels could be used to identify your settings, and your settings can contribute to personally identifiable information. So what happens on mobile if you do this? Nobody cares, right? What happens on the desktop? Brendan Eich, who's the creator of JavaScript, and the Brave browser they are going out of their ways to try to fix this issue and try to make sure that you cannot do this, cannot identify people by their data. And before you think that this only happens on the web, here's one more thing. Actually, this was also in yesterday, and fences. Oh, there you go. So there is a presentation yesterday on the Fence API, which is a lot of things, but it's basically what kind of API calls you can track in your Android application in the upcoming versions of Android, and get notifications, get callbacks of these APIs. If you want to, know the user moved location, or the user has a background activity running, which is a completely, it's an interesting developer use case. They were using it, play this and that playlist if the user is running, because they have their running up open. Oh, that's smart. I have a Pokemon Go playlist. If I'm playing Pokemon Go, I want to listen to Pokemon theme songs, stuff like that. It's a completely interesting use case, except when Twitter uses its APIs, and you might have also heard of this. Twitter has been tracking the open application, the installed application on your phone. So Twitter was reading the list of installed and open applications on your phone to give you more precise results of promoted tweets. Oh, you have Instagram installed. You might be interested in this new photo filter app, whatever, to download. So yeah, there are all kinds of privacy issues. When you increase the power of the developer, there are all kinds of malicious actors that came about and try to make try to benefit from all the power you have given them. And the problem is actually you cannot. There is like no way to change this. This is an ongoing effort on mobile, on native, on mobile web. All platforms have to struggle with this because, oh yes, we just ask the user if they want to let us access the battery API, or but I mean that gets annoying, right? You don't want your web applications every time you want to every time it wants to switch to like low power mode, to ask you to drop you a notification. Hey, do you want me to access your battery API so I can actually go into low power mode? No. And if you actually do that, what you are going to do is what actually Windows has trained all the people. The like screen that comes on in Windows when you try to install an app. Oh, this application is from an untrusted source. You might harm your computer. And yes, you have to click that button. You just reinstall your PC. You have 15 different applications you want to install from third-party sources, especially if you're working in open source. That happens a lot. And you click that button 15 times in 10 minutes. It's going to screw you over, and it's going to make you just click any button. How many of you has actually read the Facebook Messenger list of accesses, like the list of accesses provided to it? There is actually a great article where people were freaking out. Tinfoil hats on. So there was this thing that, the Messenger, Facebook Messenger app is tracking you. The Facebook Messenger app is actually listening to your voice over the microphone, trying to determine converting that voice data into voice recognition, running that through a voice recognition, trying to include those things into ads that they are showing you on Facebook. They theoretically, they could do that at some point. And tinfoil hats on, I would say Facebook is doing a lot of Mercury research. There are like a lot of articles on that. So I could imagine that happened at some point. But so there is this article of like 5 pages long. Don't be stupid. Facebook is not tracking you and not snooping on all your conversation you make. Here's the rundown of all the things that Facebook is. Let me just see if I can pull up the link. Oh, there you go. Stop freaking out about Windows, Facebook app permissions. And there's this rundown, like literally, yeah, those are the permissions. And there's this rundown, literally, like every permission. What do you use every permission for? There's like 3 pages long. So how many applications you have on your phone? Okay, you read it? It's like basically the new terms of service of that people always just accept. They learn to accept it. So all these issues are real for both platforms, but there are also real issues that come from not just the privacy, but the access to the platform. So if you ever, you saw the new Pixel phone, you decided to switch onto Android. You have been a iOS user for ages. How do you switch onto Android actually? Okay, I'm just gonna buy a new phone. I'm gonna keep my iPhone just to be sure, but I'm gonna buy a new phone. And then you realize, okay, I mean, most platforms, most applications are available for all platforms. Right? I just download them. And then you realize, oh, okay, I had this nice application that I bought in the iPhone store, so I actually have to re-buy this again because it's a different app store. Oh, okay, you realize, oh, this application is not available for the Android platform, so we have to find a different one. And then you realize, all the different ways vendors try to lock you into their own platform. All these different ways will turn into something that is you could have avoided if you created a cross-platform app. And creating a cross-platform app is actually not very easy, even with progressive web apps. But there are a lot of new technologies that you could use to make that work. There is one more thing I wanted to talk about, and even if you did, we have React now. And we can do this, fast applications with progressive web apps. We can do like offline web applications. There is a lot of controversy about whether like Safari will ever support service workers, which is kind of like a very important technology for progressive web apps and like creating offline apps. Let's say Safari does that. Nobody knows. Nobody can know. At some point, they will just, hey, here's a new version of Safari Nightly, and you can actually do this. Until then, let's just assume they do. There is one more thing. What happens when you create, and there is a huge debate going on, and what is a web app? What is an application? What is a website? Where does one end and where does one start? And there is a huge risk running, actually, for us to lose the good things that have came from the web. If you actually think back, I just told you, on the web you just copy a link, you send it to someone, and it works, right? Except, 5 years ago when Ajax came out, and all the people were writing single-page applications that had like one URL and was like murking in the application itself. You couldn't do a thing. You copied the URL, you sent it to someone, it doesn't work. And that's the second threat. Even if you actually get very close to providing a native like experience, oh yes, we can install the application to the home screen. Oh, let's just hide the URL bar so it looks more appy. Yes, you can do that with progressive web apps. You're going to create a web application that's virtually, because of the performance and because of all the things, the new technologies, indistinguishable from any other applications. If you try Pokédex, if you try any of the demo applications on a Chrome phone, you can install it to your home screen. You can launch it from the home screen with no internet whatsoever. It will launch. It will look like it's a native application. Oh, then you realize, oops, I want to actually share this URL. Oh, then you realize, how many of you have ever, if you are avid Twitter users like me, how many times you were like writing a tweet and just wanted to include somebody or something in there, and you wanted to search for the name of the person. What do you do on the web? You open a new tab and search for the name of the person. What do you do on mobile? I have no idea. You open a web page, Twitter on the web, and you try to find the person. Same goes for multiple accounts. What do you do with Twitter? You just open a new browser window, and there is your user. You couldn't do that. So losing all those that the web is actually good at is an actual threat. So I'm going to leave you with this one. This has just came out a few days ago. If you have never heard of WebVR, it's basically using web technologies to create create VR experiences. And I have no idea if I can. There you go. And WebVR is basically, if you ever heard of VRML, a VR markup, that was like 30 years ago. That's reinvented. And what you see on the screen is actually now, that's the Vive headset, the HTC Vive headset, that comes with with controllers. So you get the VR headset on your head, you get the VR controllers in your hand. And what you can do, so you you open a web page, a little icon shows up. You can click the icon. You will go into the VR mode. The application shows up as a VR. You can see on the screen it actually renders for both eyes. And not losing the powers of the web is actually, the whole web was built on interlinking documents. So how about going from one VR experience into another VR experience by just clicking on a thing? And all those things, not losing your roots, not losing what experiences make you the web, or what are just choosing the experiences you want to keep is very vital for even if you're working on native apps or even if you're working on mobile apps. Even when the two platforms are merged together, or there is like a less and less of a distinction with React Native and all the other platforms that are that go from the native to web platforms, you have to know your roots and you have to know when your stuff comes up from. So all the slides and the notes are on the link that you can see on the bottom, and you can get back to me on Twitter if you want to.